There is one thing I can say to you that you could say to your friends and family to convince them that this country is on the verge of an imminent collapse or possible civil war. One thing. And that is, what if Donald Trump does not surrender? That's it. I want you to think about where we are right now as a country. Donald Trump was indicted, reportedly on 34 counts. What happens if he does not surrender? This country gets torn apart. The legal system is meaningless. New York is powerless. They would have to go and get him now. Donald Trump has announced he will be flying to New York today in preparation of Tuesday's surrender to law enforcement. There's another thing I could say to you that I believe will convince you that we are on the verge of an imminent collapse or civil war, and that is, what if they remand Donald Trump to custody? Apparently, Trump plans on returning to Florida and delivering statements. But I'm thinking about this, and I think the most likely outcome is probably that. Donald Trump flies to New York. He goes to the courthouse, files some paperwork. They say, you're being charged. He then leaves. He's got Secret Service with him. They're going to have to negotiate this. But I started thinking about it, and I wonder, is there a possibility that a Democrat judge in New York who has Trump derangement syndrome just says, sir, not only are you a crook and a criminal, but you have private jets, I believe several. You are the definition of a flight risk. Remand to custody. I don't think it's likely, but as a thought experiment, I want you to understand how close we are. Now, of course, there are many of you who are probably saying, yeah, okay, Tim, that will never happen. How could we be close to collapse of civil war when those things will never happen? The point is this. There is one action, one, standing between us and oblivion. One action. If I came to you 5 years ago, and I did, and said we were on the verge of some kind of collapse or potentially a civil war. Again, I always preface this. It was a Princeton professor who said we're in a cold civil war. It's now basically agreed upon by everybody, even Sarah Silverman. Some people still don't believe it. That's fine. I don't know for sure. But 5 years ago, if I said this, the point people would make is, what are you talking about? I mean, we've got the federal government. We got all these things in place. Now we are looking down the barrel of a single event. If Donald Trump refused to surrender, confidence in the system is shattered. What could they do? What could they do? More importantly, though, the other side could remand Trump, placing him in jail until the completion of a trial, inhibiting him from running. This would rip the country apart overnight. And the reason I say we're close to collapse of civil war is because for the first time in my life, I have seen a moment where there is a thin veil, as thin as paper, standing between us and oblivion, that someone could just poke their finger right through. You go back several years and you're thinking, look, in order for there to be a civil war, you got to have, hyper-tribalism. You've got to have hyperpolarization. You're going to have to see this. You have to see that. Well, before that could happen, this would have to happen. And now we're looking at the moment where Donald Trump could simply be like, I'm not going to be surrendering. I will not be flying to New York. And then what? And then Democrats in New York start screaming, demanding federal intervention. Would the feds then try to go take Donald Trump? Is the Secret Service making him surrender? What if Donald Trump tomorrow goes to the courthouse and they say, you're going into a holding cell until processing, which can take several days. That is going to set a fire in this country already. And then what happens if at a bail hearing, a judge says these are felony charges, they're serious charges, you can't leave the state? Donald Trump's a flight risk. I think he has, 3 private jets? Probably more. Is that not a definition of a flight risk? Now, granted, they'll make the argument that Donald Trump is running for office. He's the front runner for the Republicans. The threat of ripping apart this country is too great. he should be free to go on bail pending, a trial and all of that stuff. I think that's the likely outcome. I think the likely outcome is that when Trump surrenders, they just say your next date will be at this time. And this is just going to inhibit his ability to campaign. The point I'm simply trying to make in opening this segment is one decision by one person, be it Trump or a judge, could rip this country in twain. Here's a story from the New York Times. Trump prepares to surrender in New York as police brace for protests. Now, before we start reading into this, head over to timcast.com and click that join us button to become a member. We set up this Discord server so that y'all could chat with us, the team, and even call into the uncensored Timcast IRL show. And last Friday, Donald Trump Jr. called into the show live because we now have the Discord ability to do it. I don't think we're going to make a big habit of allowing call-ins because I don't think it works as a podcast, but I think it was important to hear what Donald Trump Jr. had to say considering the indictment. But if you become a member, you'll be supporting our work. And then you can also join the Discord and maybe see some VIPs hanging out, people you may want to talk to. So consider that. The VIP chat room is a $25 a month membership or a $10 a month membership if you've been a member for at least 6 months. We did that gatekeeping because we're trying to keep out activists and weirdos who want to screw with us. I'm sorry it has to be this way, but let's jump back into the news. Smash that like button while you're here. The New York Times reports Donald Trump prepared on Friday to surrender to prosecutors in Manhattan next week as the New York police braced for protests and sharply partisan response from Democrats and Republicans ushered in a tumultuous time. A day after the grand jury indicted Mr. Trump, and made him the first former president to face criminal charges, metal barricades were up around the criminal courthouse on Center Street. So this we know. We're now hearing that Donald Trump will be surrendering tomorrow morning and that he will be flying today around noon to New York. We have the story from Timcast.com. Trump's lawyer says the former president will very loudly and proudly plead not guilty to charges in New York. When asked by host Dana Bash if Trump would be taking a mugshot, Tacopina replied, "This is not a normal operating procedure. It's all up in the air. All the Tuesday stuff is still very much in the air, other than the fact that we will very loudly and proudly say not guilty." Trump posted on Truth, "I will be leaving Mar-a-Lago on Monday at 12 noon, heading to Trump Tower in New York. On Tuesday morning, I will be going, believe it or not, to the courthouse. America was not supposed to be this way." I was hanging out at Maryland Live Casino this weekend and at the poker tables because, that's what I do, right? When I'm not skating or newsing, just hanging out, trying to relax. And I heard the craziest thing. Well, there was this guy sitting next to me, and he was telling me a story about his buddy who was driving down the street in Baltimore during the BLM riots of 2020. And his buddy was with his girl when a mob of far-left extremists started banging on the car and attacking it, and I think cracked the windshield. So he hit the gas, ran a few people over. He's been, I think, convicted of attempted murder, and he's going to prison. And this guy was like, "I can't believe it. I can't believe it." And it was funny to me. I was like, here's a regular guy who's starting to understand. And then he says, in response to what's happening in this country, that he thought the government should execute the January 6 rioters. Now I'm just like, okay, I'm going to stop talking because I don't want to upset a guy. He seemed like he was a very nice guy. He was a very funny guy. We were having a good time. And I tell you this story simply because I look at this and I'm just like, this is a regular guy and he can see what's happening and he's still of this mindset. But that was so extreme. And look, man, people tell me, "Oh, you got to go out and touch grass, Tim." I'm going and hanging out at a bar. I'm hanging out at a casino. I'm talking to people playing a friendly game who have no idea what's going on in the world. And the conversation came up. Someone else brought up the economy or something, probably having to do with table stakes, how much people were playing. And someone said, "Yeah, well, this economy because of Joe Biden." All of a sudden, this guy's talking about it. I talk about it. And this is where we are. This idea, I was just shocked to hear it. So when he said that to me, that he thought that the January 6 rioters should be executed, I was like, wow, dude, And I asked him, do you know about 529? And he was like, I don't know, what was that? And I was like, the insurrection at the White House. And he was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, when the far left people tore the barricades down, firebombed St. John's Church, firebombed a guard post, thousands of cops had to come out. They were fighting. He's like, I have no idea what that is. And I was like, isn't that weird, though? You didn't know about that? This is where we are, man. And I know most of you know about this. It's funny when people are like, Tim, stop trying to make 529 a thing. No, I'm making a point. May 29th, far leftists tore down the barricades of the White House, firebombed a church and a guard post on the White House grounds, forced Donald Trump into an emergency bunker. That happened. You can talk about January 6th, call it an insurrection or whatever, but sure, that one happened too. If you want to just step back and, you know, if you want to argue January 6th wasn't an insurrection, by all means, I think it was a riot because people in the front were rioting. I think 529 was a riot, but if we're playing the insurrection game and that's your terminology, I'll say that was an insurrection too. But let's just step back and step outside of ourselves for a second. How do you think the left feels about January 6th? Well, I think it was an insurrection. How does the right feel about 529? Well, the right thinks that the January 6th and 529 were both riots. However, the right, seeing both incidents, can understand. We're on the precipice. The far left has gone insane. The Democrats have gone insane. January 6th insurrection locked these people up. Half the people were let in by cops who opened the doors, fanned them on in, and they walked around. So this is where we're at. Those that are in the cult and those that aren't. Then there are people on the periphery who don't want to be involved in politics and aren't paying attention and don't know the truth. They hear a story, Donald Trump indicted. Let me give the real story. Vivek Ramaswamy tweeted this. America now has a two-tiered justice system. Trump is indicted while Clinton pays a small fine. Antifa and BLM rioters roam free while January 6 protesters are imprisoned without bail. Douglas Mackey faces 10 years for the same joking memes that Christina Wong posts with impunity. Yeah. Jack Posobiec tweets. Last year, Hillary Clinton quietly settled a campaign finance violation over reporting the Steele dossier funding as legal services. She paid a fine and was never arrested. March 31st, 2022. DNC Clinton campaign agreed to Steele dossier funding fine. The Clinton campaign hired Perkins Coie, which then hired Fusion GPS, a research intelligence firm, to conduct opposition research on Republican candidate Donald Trump, his ties to Russia. But in FEC forms, the Clinton campaign classified the spending as legal services. She was fined $113,000 to settle a federal election commission investigation into whether they violated campaign finance law. Now, we had Destiny, the omniliberal, on the show last week, and he said the indictment's going to have more than just the Stormy Daniels thing. I agree. 34 counts. They are going after Trump in New York State, not at the federal level, and it's going to be more than people realize. I think this will catch a lot of conservatives off guard, but I don't think it matters at all. Conservatives have this problem of looking at a situation and then being like, is there some argument to be made? Whereas the left simply says, we'll argue anything. You know, I look at it this way. We're playing a game of Monopoly. They keep cheating. If for some reason Republicans and conservatives are like, we'll keep playing the game. You know, I just don't get it. I really, really don't. We know they will lie, cheat, and steal. We know Hillary Clinton gets a freebie. We know Donald Trump gets indicted. We know that's exactly how it plays out. The media will lie. They hate Trump. Yet for some reason, conservatives still argue the merits of what the left presents. The left will come out. They'll say, look, Donald Trump did these things. If he did, he should be indicted. And the right will go, well, you know, it's a fair point. If there was an indictment and we got to see the evidence. And then when Hillary Clinton does these things, the right just goes, nothing. That's it, nothing. No protests. No, where's Florida? Well, how about in Florida they file these violations? How about Florida go after Hillary Clinton? They don't do it. Conservatives are spineless. This is why the Republican Party is being taken over. The MAGA people aren't spineless. You know, to varying degrees. I think your run-of-the-mill conservative is relatively spineless. And I think that's why they prefer, to a great degree, the establishment Republicans really do want a DeSantis. Because DeSantis is safe. He's very safe. I like DeSantis. He's brilliant. He's done a tremendous job in Florida. He's great. But he's safe. Ron DeSantis will get up on stage and he will say something like, we will not be involved in the indictment, in the extradition of Donald Trump. This is a political persecution by a Soros DA. Bye. Now I'm going to go leave and have nothing to do with this fight. I can respect it to a certain degree, but that's the perfect example of what conservatives do. The Democrats quite literally bailed out murderous rioters. 19 plus direct deaths in the summer of love. And Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's staff helped support and pay the bail of these extremists. And then the best you can get with a Ron DeSantis is, we're going to do nothing. Bye. Wow. But I get it. Imagine what would happen if Ron DeSantis got up on stage and said, mark my words, Donald Trump will not be extradited. And I will use the full force of my office and authority to prevent New York from executing this political persecution against a resident of my state. Imagine that. Imagine that. No, that's not what we got. I'm not going to be involved in this, guys. Don't look at me. I don't know. If I was the governor of Florida, I'd immediately call a meeting with Donald Trump. And I'd say, what are your plans and what do you want to do? I would then give a press conference or a speech and I would say, Donald Trump has told me personally he will intentionally fly to New York to face these indictments, and I have tremendous respect for it. But mark my words, should Trump change his mind and choose to remain in this state, no one will lay a finger on him, and he will not be extradited. Mainstream establishment Republicans will keep giving you that voice of, we're not going to get involved in this one. It's remarkable to me. I like DeSantis. I like his policies. I think he's a good dude. I think his team is great. He's not presidential, maybe vice presidential. You know, I know like last year I was hanging out with the Daily Wire crew and we were like, I think DeSantis has got it. And now we see that when it comes to the sheer aggression from the extremist left, that he doesn't got it. Yeah, he might have some sound policies. He stopped the lockdowns. It's great leadership. And there's really good things about it. Look, I'm not opposed to him. I would even consider him for president if DeSantis wins the nomination for the GOP, hands down, no question, vote for the guy. I think he's fantastic. But it's like a stopgap, a half measure. What we need is a president who is going to say, if you want to play ball, I will play ball. And, sometimes you have to tell people, try it. I don't know how else to explain it. Let's go head to head. If you are going to try and push me around, let's see if you've actually got the balls to come at me. I'll call your bluff. I'm standing right here. This is what we don't get from conservatives. They are passive, weak. The Democrats slap them around and they just say, well, hold on. We had Rick Santorum on the show. I appreciate him coming on the shows. It was fantastic. And I asked him if he thought Joe Biden should be impeached. No, we got to play by the rules. Trump's being indicted for garbage, but we got to play by the rules. Yeah, those are the rules. You're not playing by the rules. You're just sitting there getting beaten. Playing by the rules is recognizing the game your opponent is playing and saying, we'll play, but you don't want to see what's going to happen if we play that game. Donald Trump refuses to leave Florida. Ron DeSantis steps up and says, law enforcement will surround and protect Donald Trump. We will replace Secret Service with state protection, and no one will touch him. Not the feds, not New York. Play the game. This is insane what they're doing. And the best conservatives can do, and to be fair, even Trump himself. Now, I got to be honest with y'all. Take a look at this. Robert C. Cahaley says new GOP presidential primary Trafalgar Group polls show a changing Donald Trump lead based on indictment talk. 12% up before indictment, 14% after indictment, 33 after actual indictment. I'm sorry, 14 was after indictment announcement, and 33 was after the action. Trump's polling is skyrocketing because of this. That's the strategy Trump is playing. So I don't expect Trump just be like, listen, I refuse to be extradited. No, Trump is outright saying, I made $5 million in a day because of this. You want to play? We'll make it hurt. It's smart. So I get it. I think DeSantis should have made a stronger statement, but perhaps the whole game being played here is Trump is attempting to use this to his advantage, which is smart. That's why I think, I'm for Trump 2024 over DeSantis, because DeSantis came out and said, and Trump came out and was like, I'll be there. I will stare you down. That's bold. Part of me wishes Trump says he wouldn't surrender. But, I think Trump has a plan. But I'm also worried that he surrounds himself with stupid people. I don't want to swear. Stupid people. I almost wonder if the best thing for Trump to do is to just not surrender and say the courts will determine, right? Some other state says you're going to come back here and we're going to charge you the crime. Like, I don't live there, dude. Good luck. Like the crimes they're committing with, I don't even know if they're extraditable. I guess they're felonies. But typically what would happen is New York would contact Florida and say we have a warrant for his arrest and there'd be some cooperation. And if Florida said no, then nothing happens. It's crazy because I don't know where this goes. And I'm not going to pretend like I'm the smartest guy in the room. Maybe DeSantis and Trump have a plan and I just don't know. Fine. I'm just sick of seeing weakness from the right. We've got the left. You want to talk about strength? Let's talk about the guy who worked at Taco Bell who was wearing a Black Lives Matter mask. And they said, take it off or you're fired. He goes, then I quit. Then he made a video screaming about how they made him take it off. Taco Bell backed down, rehires the guy and says, we're sorry that happened. He got fired, I guess. Dude was willing to lose his job so that he could wear a Black Lives Matter mask. Conservatives ain't willing to do that. They don't want to lose their jobs. They're like, I could lose my job if I speak up. Okay, that's fine, man. I get it. But these people are willing to go to hell and back for their cause. How are you going to beat that? You ain't. You can believe in America and you can say, I just want to be left alone. But if you just want to be left alone, you will lose to those who are firebombing buildings and don't care if they get locked up. Don't care if they lock up a former president. But we'll see. We'll see what happens when Trump flies to New York City. Maybe as soon as he lands, the police surround him and they say, we're taking you into custody now. I want y'all to understand this. By the time you watch this video, many of you, it may have already happened. So I get that. But just consider the 1%, the 0.1%, the 0.01% chance that Donald Trump, who has been indicted, let's say he lands in his private jet in New York. I'd imagine he's going to be landing in, I don't know where he'll land. Maybe he'll land at Teterboro, New Jersey, which is common for private jets. But considering Trump's got a big one, got that big 77, he might want to go to JFK. And when he lands, they'll know it's his plane, tracking all of it. I want you to consider he lands and there are a few black SUVs. He deboards the plane with the NYPD waiting, who walk up calmly, shake the hand of the Secret Service agent and say, we are placing Donald Trump under arrest for 34 felony counts. He will be remanded to custody pending a trial. You can follow us if you like, but this is what's going to happen. Let's talk about the lottery tickets chance of what might happen. The Secret Service then says, you will not lay a hand on Donald Trump. We can't allow it. And then they say, this is the law and we have the right. And then a fight ensues. What would happen if the Secret Service says that is not what we agreed upon and Donald Trump will not be taken into custody? He will be surrendering tomorrow. And the NYPD says, we don't care. I don't think that'll happen. But I bring it up because it could. Think about this. Let's say you or anyone else is charged with 34 counts, felonies. Do you think that if you land your private jet with your name on it in that state, they would not arrest you on the spot? Of course they would. Now, Trump's a former president, so these are unprecedented times. We've never seen anything like this. But I hope y'all are ready, because we have no idea what's about to happen, and it could happen today. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.